A restaurant owner believed he had built a perfect business. Every plate was served fresh. Every customer left satisfied, and every worker was trusted. But one night, hidden in the shadows of his own kitchen, he saw something that shook him deeply. His waiter was not taking tips, nor money. He was stealing food. The owner's anger flared until he heard the truth that would change his heart, his restaurant, and countless lives forever. The restaurant was quiet that night. The sound of clinking plates echoed softly from the kitchen. The owner stood near the counter, watching his staff move quickly between tables. The smell of freshly baked bread and roasted spices filled the air. Everything seemed normal, until his eyes fell on one waiter. The young man's hands trembled as he carefully wrapped pieces of bread and tucked them into a cloth. His face was pale, his eyes restless, darting toward the doorway, as if afraid of being caught. The owner narrowed his eyes, his chest tightening with suspicion. He followed the waiter quietly, each step pressing heavy against the polished wooden floor. The waiter thought no one was watching. He opened the back door, clutching the food tightly to his chest. The cold night breeze rushed in, carrying the scent of rain-soaked streets. The owner's voice broke the silence. "What are you doing?" The waiter froze. His shoulders stiffened, and the bread nearly slipped from his grip. Slowly, he turned, his eyes wide. Filled with fear and shame, the owner's face was stern, his brows furrowed, his heart pounding with a mix of anger and confusion. The waiter's lips trembled. Tears welled up in his eyes, but he remained silent, his chest rising and falling with quick breaths. The owner stepped closer, the weight of the moment pressing down like a heavy storm. The smell of food between them felt almost unbearable now. Rich and warm, while the air around them grew colder, the waiter finally whispered, his voice breaking. "My children have not eaten in 2 days." The words struck the owner like a knife. The room seemed to blur, the sounds of the restaurant fading into the distance. The owner's hands loosened at his sides, his sternness softening. He looked at the trembling man before him, holding food, not for greed, but for survival. The owner's chest tightened, his breath heavy with the weight of compassion. He had a choice to make. The owner reached out and gently placed his hand on the waiter's shoulder. The young man lowered his head, unable to meet his eyes. The bread in his hands shook as if it carried the weight of his shame. The owner's voice softened. "Why did you not tell me?" The waiter's throat tightened. "I was afraid you would send me away. I cannot lose this job. My children depend on me." Tears rolled down his cheeks as his words cracked the silence. The owner felt a sting in his chest, a memory of his own childhood, flashing in his mind. He too had once known the pain of an empty stomach. He too had once prayed for a helping hand. Without another word, the owner gently took the bread from his hands. The waiter gasped, certain his fate was sealed. But instead of anger, the owner walked toward the kitchen. He began to fill a large basket with warm bread, fragrant rice, fresh meat, and fruit. The kitchen staff stared in silence, their eyes wide with confusion. The owner carried the basket back and placed it firmly in the waiter's arms. The waiter's eyes widened, his lips trembling as if words refused to come. The weight of the food felt heavy, but the kindness behind it felt even heavier. The owner looked into his eyes and said softly, "Feed your children. And from tomorrow, you will never have to steal again. You will have food for them every day." The waiter collapsed to his knees, clutching the basket tightly, his tears falling onto the tiled floor. The restaurant filled with silence, broken only by the sound of his sobs. The other staff members watched, their hearts stirring with emotion. The owner stood tall, his face calm, but inside, his heart was trembling. He knew this night would change not just the waiter's life, but his own as well. The waiter pressed his forehead against the basket, whispering broken words of gratitude. The owner bent down and lifted him gently by the shoulders. "Stand with dignity," he said softly. The waiter rose slowly, his body still shaking, but his spirit lifted by the kindness shown to him. The other workers stepped closer, their eyes glistening with silent tears. One of the cooks quietly offered more fruit to add to the basket. Another brought a bottle of milk, placing it gently on top. The room was filled with a warmth that no fire could create. The waiter looked around, his vision blurred with tears, and saw not just colleagues but a family. The owner's voice carried through the silence. "From this day, no child of my workers will sleep hungry." The words struck deep into every heart present. The waiter clutched the basket to his chest as if it were life itself. His lips trembled, and his voice finally broke free. "You have not only saved my children tonight, you have given me hope too. Live." The owner placed his hand over his heart, his eyes heavy with unspoken emotion. For the first time in a long while, the restaurant felt less like a business and more like a home. The waiter walked slowly toward the door, holding the basket close as if it were a treasure. The cold night air brushed against his face, but his heart burned with warmth. He turned back once more, his tear-stained eyes meeting the gaze of the owner in that silent exchange. Gratitude and compassion spoke louder than any words could. The owner nodded gently, his expression calm but filled with meaning. The waiter stepped out into the night, his footsteps light despite the weight in his arms. The streets were quiet, lamps glowing faintly against the darkness. Each step he took carried the promise of full plates and smiling faces at home. Meanwhile, the owner remained at the doorway, watching him disappear into the distance. The sound of laughter and clattering dishes returned from inside the restaurant, but his heart was still with the man walking home. He breathed deeply, the aroma of food mixing with the cool night breeze, and a thought settled firmly in his mind. No hunger should ever hide in silence. Again, the waiter reached his small home at the edge of the street, the dim glow of a lantern flickering through the window. He pushed the door open gently, and the sight before him pierced his heart. His children sat huddled together on the floor, their eyes heavy with weariness, their tiny bodies weakened by hunger. The moment they saw him, their faces lit up with fragile hope. He placed the basket down, and the fragrance of warm food filled the room. The children rushed forward, their little hands trembling as they touched the bread and fruit. Tears streamed down their faces as they ate, their laughter breaking through the silence of the night. The waiter stood back, his own tears falling freely, his heart swelling with relief, for the first time in days. His children were smiling. He whispered a silent prayer of thanks, not just for the food, but for the kindness that had restored his dignity. Back at the restaurant, the owner sat alone at a table, staring at the empty chair across from him. Memories of his own struggles resurfaced, reminding him why compassion mattered more than profit. A quiet smile touched his lips as he imagined the children eating, and in that moment, he felt a peace deeper than any success he had ever known. The children finished their meal and leaned against their father, their bellies full, and their eyes heavy with sleep. He wrapped his arms around them, feeling the steady rhythm of their breathing, as if the world had finally given them rest. The lantern's dim flame flickered across the small room, casting shadows on the cracked walls. But tonight, those walls felt like a palace. The waiter's heart ached with both sorrow and gratitude. Knowing how close despair had been, and how kindness had lifted them away from it, he kissed the foreheads of his children, whispering promises of brighter days ahead. Meanwhile, the owner walked slowly through his restaurant, his hand brushing across the empty tables. He looked at each chair, as if imagining a family sitting there, sharing food, sharing love. He stopped near the kitchen and spoke softly to his staff. "From tomorrow, we will prepare extra meals every night. Those who are in need must find food here, not hunger." The staff exchanged glances, their hearts moved by his decision. The restaurant, once only a place of business, had begun to transform into a place of hope, and as the night grew darker outside, inside both homes, hearts glowed with a new light that would not fade. The next morning, the waiter arrived at the restaurant with his children by his side. They clutched his hands tightly, their eyes wide with wonder as they stepped into the warm, bustling place. The aroma of fresh bread and simmering stew greeted them, filling their hearts with joy before a single word was spoken. The owner approached slowly, his gaze softening as he looked at the little ones. The children lowered their heads shyly, but their smiles betrayed their gratitude. The waiter bent down and whispered, "This is the man who helped us when we had nothing." The children looked up, their eyes shining with innocence, and one of them stepped forward. "Thank you, sir," the child said, his small voice trembling yet full of sincerity. The owner knelt down to their level, placing a gentle hand on the child's shoulder. "No child should ever need to thank me for food," he replied with a warm smile. "From today, this place will always be open for you." The staff watched quietly, their hearts swelling with pride to be part of something greater than just serving meals. The restaurant filled with the laughter of children, blending with the clatter of dishes and the rhythm of life. And in that moment, everyone knew that kindness had changed not just one family, but the soul of the entire place. The waiter bowed his head, unable to hold back the tears that welled in his eyes. His children clung to him, their small hands wrapped around his arms as if they would never let go. The owner stood and addressed the staff and customers who had gathered, their curiosity turning into quiet admiration. "This restaurant will not only serve those who can pay," he declared, his voice steady and full of conviction. "It will also serve those who have nothing. For hunger does not ask for wealth before it strikes." A hush fell over the room, followed by the sound of gentle applause that grew louder with each passing second. The waiter's heart pounded as he realized the weight of what had just been promised. His children looked around in wonder, their smiles brighter than the morning sun streaming through the windows. The owner raised his hand, signaling the beginning of something new. The cooks rushed to prepare extra trays, filling them with bread, rice, and steaming soup. The smell of fresh food spread through the air, carrying with it the promise of hope, and in that moment, the restaurant became more than a place to eat. It became a shelter of love and dignity for all who entered. Word of the owner's decision spread quickly through the town. By evening, people began arriving not only for meals but for comfort, their weary faces softening as they stepped inside. Some came with coins, others came with nothing but empty hands and hungry eyes. The staff welcomed them all the same, serving each person with respect and warmth. The waiter moved among the guests with his children nearby, their laughter carrying through the restaurant. Like music, the owner watched quietly from the corner, his heart swelling as he saw strangers sharing tables, breaking bread together as if they were family. The walls that once echoed only with business now rang with gratitude and joy. An old woman clasped the owner's hand, her voice trembling as she said, "You have given us more than food. You have given us back our dignity." The owner felt his throat tighten, his eyes misting with emotions he did not try to hide. The glow of lanterns lit the room, but it was the kindness shared within that truly illuminated the night. And as the restaurant buzzed with life, it became clear that what had started with a single act of compassion was now growing into a movement of humanity. As the night drew to a close, the last guests finished their meals and left with full hearts and full stomachs. The waiter stood by the door, his children resting peacefully against his side, their eyes heavy with sleep but their faces glowing with happiness. He looked toward the owner, his voice soft but firm. "You have not only saved my family, you have changed my life." The owner smiled gently, his gaze filled with warmth. "Kindness is never lost. One day, you will pass it on to someone else in need." The waiter nodded, his chest swelling with a new sense of purpose. The staff began to clean, the clatter of dishes mingling with the gentle hush of the night. The owner lingered at the counter, looking around his restaurant one last time before closing. It no longer felt like just a place of business. It felt like a home where no one would be turned away. The lanterns dimmed, the doors closed, and silence filled the space. But within that silence, a promise remained that compassion, once shared, continues to grow, lighting hearts long after the day has ended.